League of Legends is a competitive game by nature, but ultimately the goal is to have fun, and there's nothing more fun than gripping the enemy carry into your team to get blown up. I play Blitz because I have fun even if I'm losing, but today we're not going to talk about losing. Blitz is my most played champion, and I'm currently sitting at a 74% win rate with him in Diamond 1. This guy will teach you everything from the basics to advanced tactics, but most importantly, it will teach you how to win. For starters, you have to choose the right skin. If you're not going to use Boom Boom Blitz, then just go home. You can follow every other tip in this video and still fail if you don't have the skin, so make sure you pick it up. Avoid Blitzcrank especially, or you'll play like you're on a Mac, and no one wants that. For runes, you want to use AD reds, armor yellows, MR blues, 180 quint, and 2 health quints. This is the page I use for Thresh, Blitz, and Leona. The main reason you want to use it on Blitz is because his Power Fist is an auto attack reset, and it also deals double damage. In a normal sequence of auto attack, power fist, auto attack, you get an extra 44 damage using this page, and the damage just stacks up the longer the fight goes on. I split MR between scaling and flat on most pages because I'm a hipster, but also because having a little extra MR post level 6 is pretty useful. This rune page is often a difference between a good blitz and a scary blitz. If you don't have enough room for this rune page, it's better to run a 15 AD page than a support page. For masteries, the classic 113-16 page is the best. The block mastery and extra HP in the defensive tree is important, along with the extra gold, summoner spell cooldown, and extra starting items and utility. These pages are what I run on Blitz every single game, no matter what, but if you want to see my full video on support masteries and runes, I'll have a link to that somewhere on the screen right now. For summoner spells, I run Flash Ignite around 80% of my games and Flash Exhaust the other 20%. Exhaust is a good late game summoner against assassins, but let's be honest, in YOLO queue all that matters is whether or not you can dumpster your lane, and Ignite is the best for that. Sometimes your lane is just unkillable though, so it's better to run Exhaust instead of Ignite. A perfect example of this is Triss Leona. There's absolutely no way you're going to kill them in lane with Blitz unless they make a huge mistake. Also, make sure you use your Ignite early on in trade so you get the extra 5 AD for your auto attacks and Power Fist. At level 1 to 2, if I land a hook, I'll ignite immediately, and it usually forces them to flash, which makes them incredibly vulnerable in a Blitz lane. For starting items, you have 2 options. The first is what I use most games, which is 2 health potions, 1 mana potion, 2 sight wards, and 2 pink wards. The second is what I use when I'm playing against an Eve jungle, or sometimes versus a team with teleport. 1 health potion, 1 mana potion, 1 sight ward, and 3 pink wards. What about Fairy Charm, you say? No. But how are you going to get your Philo? No, okay, here's the thing. First of all, starting with a Fairy Charm eats up 180 of your starting gold. This essentially pigeonholes you into only having 1 pink ward, which is absolutely terrible, especially as Blitz. Without bush control and or fear the jungler, Blitz is absolutely useless and will get bullied in lane. Second, Sightstone is infinitely better than Philostone, not only because it gives you more GP10 in the form of wards, but also because it gives you tankiness in lane. I actually don't get Philostone at all most games, which transitions us perfectly into item builds. My build most games usually looks something like this. Sightstone, Boots 1, Moby Boots, Oracles, Ruby Sightstone, and then I continue to buy more wards and refresh Oracles. The order isn't particularly important, and sometimes I get Ruby Sightstone before Oracles, but the one thing that is pretty important is getting Moby Boots before Oracles, because you want to be able to move around the map quickly. But how will you ever finish your T-Force if you're buying so many Oracles and have no GP10? As much as Freak will try to convince you, having tons of damage isn't better than having map control. Oracles destroys solo queue because having no vision on the map starts to demoralize the other team, and everyone starts to blame the support for not warding. Then, when the support tries to ward, you grip them into your team because they have no vision, kill them, take a free Baron, and win the game. You might think I'm exaggerating, but this happens all the time. Blitz has the ability to change a game with a single hook, and Oracles opens up a ton of opportunities to land game-changing hooks. But all that aside, sometimes you do get fed and have a ton of extra gold. So what do you buy in that case? I still go for my Oracles and Moby Boots, but after that, I'll usually pick up a Zeke's, Locket, or Morellonomicon. Zeke's is an incredibly underrated item, and it's good if you have at least 2 AD champions on your team. Locket is a cheap defensive item that works well versus AoE teams and physical damage. Morellonomicon is another cheap item that gives you quite a bit of mana regeneration and AP, along with 20% CDR. Blitz actually scales really well with AP, and CDR is always a good thing to have. Alright, last of the boring stuff, and then we get on to the more exciting parts of the game. Skill order is pretty self-explanatory. R over Q over W over E. That is, level up Rocket Grab first, then Overdrive, then Power Fist, and obviously skill up your ultimate whenever you can. The reason why you level up Rocket Grab first is because the damage goes up by 55 each rank, and the cooldown goes down by 1 second each rank. Blitz is all about burst, so you want to skill up the ability that's going to give you the most burst. Overdrive versus Power Fist is really personal preference, but I like to be able to speed around the map and clear wards quicker. Reduced cooldown on Power Fist is obviously nice in sustained fights, but if you're counting on winning sustained fight with Blitz on your team, you're already in trouble. Now that we've gone through all the technical stuff, we can start looking at how you should play the game out as Blitz. Anyone that plays with me knows by now that I like to invade every game no matter what because that's what real men do. It's another reason why I like playing Blitz. His invade is really strong if you're able to catch someone off guard. The idea is to be faster than the enemy team so you can catch out a single person instead of running into a bush of 5 people. Your objective isn't to steal buffs or even to kill anyone, but simply burn a flash or two and establish your dominance. Anything more than that is just icing on the cake. When you're looking to grip someone during an invade, try to save your grip for as long as possible so you can ensure that they blow flash or in some cases die. Also, make sure you tell your team at champion select that you want to man up so everyone can buy their items quickly. Before we get to the laning phase, I have to let you in on something. Blitz is not the best laner. And when I say he's not the best, I mean he's like one of the worst laning supports in the game. Not only are there a bunch of champions that flat out counter him to hell and back in both a support and AD role, but his base stats just aren't very good and his mana costs are ridiculous for his mana pool. However, just because Blitz should lose lane on paper doesn't mean that he'll always lose lane in reality. The fact of the matter is that one grip can still win the lane, and unconfident players are afraid of that. Blitz works off intimidation, and for all intents and purposes, if you play like you're ahead, then you're ahead. In my solo queue journey, I found that a lot of people don't really understand matchups, and you can essentially bully your way to winning any lane in the game if you just play like you're ahead, even if your lane is inherently weaker than the enemy's lane. This kind of psychological play is especially powerful on Blitz, but smart players will call your bluff, so be careful. In the early laning phase, you typically don't want to grip at level 1 unless a good opportunity presents itself because it costs quite a bit of mana and missing a grip puts you pretty far back. But if you guys don't know by now, I'm a super aggressive player, so if someone gets out of line, then I'm gonna grab that booty. At the very least, even if you don't burn flashes, you establish dominance in lane by showing them that you can land hooks and that you're here to fuck shit up. Like I said earlier in the video, if you land a hook, you want to ignite immediately and start pummeling them with your extra AD. As the laning phase goes on, you want to keep bush control as much as possible and download the enemy lane. What I mean by download is learn their movement patterns, see if they're playing passive or aggressive, see if they know how to abuse their character's mechanics to counter yours, etc. For example, in the clips that you've been watching, you see that Tristana actually knows how to cancel Blitz's hook, so what do? I start gripping Nami instead to show her what's up. But playing when you're ahead is easy. How do you play it out when you're behind? Well, Blitz doesn't exactly have the best kit for playing behind in lane due to having no sustain or shields, but he does have the advantage of being able to land hooks on tower. One of you may die in the process, but ultimately it's better to trade kills instead of dying for nothing. And look, here's the thing. Blitz doesn't have to win lane to be effective in the game. Blitz's real strength is in the mid and late game where he's able to make picks that snowball into objectives. If you're losing lane, don't freak out. Just try to survive, make it to the mid game, buy Moby boots and oracles, and make some picks for your team. The mid game starts whenever the players in the game want it to, but it's usually after an outer tower dies in mid or bot lane, which in solo queue is usually anywhere from 10 to 15 to 20 minutes in. If you're losing lane, you can force everyone into the mid game by buying oracles and roaming around the map. This forces the enemy team to be a bit more scared of what's going on, and the enemy support will typically buy oracles in response, setting the mid game in motion. The mid game favors Blitz over almost any other champion in the game because you're able to roam freely, pick people off, and then force objectives with a number advantage. Once it gets in the mid game, you don't ever want to not have an oracles. No, your Aegis is not more important than oracles. Yes, you may spend over 2k gold on oracles alone in any one game, but it's incredibly important to have it on supports, and especially important to have it on Blitz. The late game is essentially just an extension of the mid game, but the timers are longer and objectives shift from outer turrets and dragons to inhibitors and barons. Basically, the stakes are higher, which means Blitz is even stronger in the late game than he is in the mid game, because of his ability to create picks. In terms of who you want to focus, it's really dependent on the situation, but generally speaking, anyone that you grab in your team at 30 plus minutes is going to die quickly 1v5, no matter how tanky they are. Blitz doesn't do too well in sustained fights, but when you do find yourself stuck in one, use your abilities sparingly on important targets. In an all-out 5v5, Blitz does not function as a dive champion. His rocket grab acts as a knockback for your AD if you think of it in terms of relativity, and his power fist can be useful in disrupting assassins. If they do have an important assassin on your team and you choose to take exhaust, make sure you're standing close enough to your carry to get it off in time. Again, Blitz is one of the worst supports in a sustained fight, so make sure you use your abilities wisely. We've gone through just about everything you need to know to play Blitz well, but you're probably still only going to be an above average Blitz after watching this far into the video. To have a god hand like me, there are a few extra things you need to know, so this is the part of the video where I spell out some of the secrets to help you all. They're going to range from general tips to special things that the majority of people don't know, so listen up. For starters, most people know that Ezreal's Arcane Shift can cancel Blitz's hook, but a lot of people still don't know that Tristana's Rocket Jump can do the same thing. I showed it earlier in the video, but I figured I would mention it here as well in case some of you skip forward. So, what the hell can we do against them in lane if our most important ability is essentially negated? Well, generally speaking, it's definitely harder to deal with Ezreal because his poke fucks you and his Arcane Shift is a get out of jail free card, but there are a few things you can do to cope with it. First of all, capitalizing on his mistakes or overconfidence is the most important thing. If he ever uses Arcane Shift offensively, you better be on that before he realizes how much of a dumbass he is. Second, pink warding brushes means your hook is invisible to him, which means it's much harder for him to react with his Arcane Shift. Most players won't be dumb enough to stay in range of a brush hook, but again, it's all about capitalizing on mistakes. Third, simply run at the Ezreal and scare him into using his Arcane Shift. Smart players will probably just run away in a straight line and save their Arcane Shift because they know they're not in any real danger, but not everyone is a smart player, not even in Diamond 1. Also, depending on what items and rank of overdrive you have, you might be able to just outrun an Ezreal and get in a melee range of him if he doesn't use Arcane Shift. The last solution is what everyone always talks about, but honestly, it's not that realistic. Get in range for your ultimate, silence him, and then hook him while he's silenced. The problem is that there's a gap in between the hook and the following power fist where you can spam Arcane Shift to get away, so it doesn't really end up accomplishing much at the end of the day, unless you have a flash to follow up. Honestly, in an Ezreal lane, you're going to find yourself gripping the support 95% of the time because it's just not worth it to waste hook on Ezreal. Tristana is a little bit easier to deal with in lane because she doesn't have as much poke, but the whole rocket grab cancelling shit is still really annoying. Fortunately for you, Tristana has one of the clunkiest escapes in the game and it's incredibly easy to interrupt with Power Fist. For those of you that played WoW, I think it works the same way as a Hunter's Disengage. That is, the game considers Trista be standing where she jumped from until she hits the ground on the other side. Basically what this means is that you're actually able to react to the rocket jump with your Power Fist instead of predicting it like you would have to do with other AD carries. Players always seem to be surprised when I pull this off, but I assure you it's not luck. With practice and good reaction times, you can pull this off 100% of the time on Tristana. Aside from that, all the same things I said about Ezreal also apply to Trist. So I touched on it for a second, but it's possible to interrupt most gap closers in the game. The problem is that they're not all as clunky as Tristana's, so you can't exactly react to them going off. You can, however, predict them and cancel them that way. The best way to predict when someone is going to use their gap closer is to wait half a second after you grip them. Pretty much every player in the game is mashing their escape because they don't know any better, so as soon as they mash it out, your Power Fist will come out and interrupt them. Sometimes, gripping isn't the best option. Some people try really hard to dodge your hook by running in crooked lines, and this enables you to walk in a straight line up to them, knock them up, and then land a guaranteed grip. Again, intimidation is a huge factor when you're playing Blitz, so use that to your advantage. Blitz's ultimate does a lot of damage passively, so don't activate until you're sure that the fight is ending, you're about to die, or you're able to hit a bunch of people with AoE. At rank 1, the passive does 40% the damage of the active, at rank 2 it jumps up to 53%, and at rank 3 it jumps up to 60%. Starting at rank 2, it only takes 5 seconds for the passive to outdamage the active on a single target, so keep that in mind. Also, the quite unfortunate part of Blitz's ultimate is that there's no way to actually cancel the passive damage aside from activating his ultimate. So when you're clearing Baron with oracles, you have to use your ultimate before clearing. It's a bit annoying, but unfortunately that's just how it is. The final tip is to man the fuck up because Blitz is a champion that makes plays and lives life on the edge. If you're gonna play like a pussy, dear God, please do not play my champion. Know your limits and disengage or re-engage at appropriate times for epic outplays. Anyway, that concludes this incredibly long champion guide. If you guys enjoyed it or found it useful, please make sure to let me know in the comment section below and send it to your friends. Oh, and if you want to know how to counter Blitz because you're not man enough to play him, make sure to check out my video on how to counter him. If you guys like to see me make more videos like this, let me know and I'll be sure to make more on my favorite champions. Thank you all for watching, good luck in your games, and I'll see you all next time.